Hey everyone, and welcome to our show today. We have a very near and dear friend to my heart. We have Kelly Cooper here. He is a certified financial planner and a chartered life underwriter, which is important. We're going to explain why that's important and what that means. But Kelly Cooper is here with us today, and he is with U.S. Capital Wealth Advisors. And we're going to talk a little bit about things that people need to know when it comes to financial planning and how important that is to have someone like yourself in your corner for your life, right? So this is going to be a really fun one, just because Kelly and I grew up together, even though we didn't know we grew up together. He is a unicorn like myself. I'm fifth generation Austinite, and you're,
I don't know,
third probably. Third generation Austinite. And so it's kind of fun because we've seen Austin change so much over the years, and how it's evolved, not just from, restaurants and businesses, but from an influx of people moving here, right? And of course, real estate related stuff. But let's start with a fun question for you. I would like to ask you this, since, you're a unicorn like me. What's probably one of the things you love most about Austin?
It's tough. There's a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Growing up here, my favorite thing to do was go to the lake, and I always went to Lake Travis. I play a lot of golf. There's a lot of things that Austin used to have very central to the city that they don't have anymore. So if you think about where the Lowe's is on Mopac and Steck, that used to be a driving range.
Yeah.
My dad would go there.
That's right. I honestly didn't even remember that.
We go hit golf balls on a Tuesday night after school.
Yeah.
And then...
because you grew up in Northwest Hills.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, Austin's really unique. It's tough as a native Austinite to see the change that happens here. Mm-hmm. Being in my business in financial services and your business in real estate, it's really good for our business with an influx of people. Just there's little parts of Austin that you don't want to see change, that it does happen, and it's fine, and it looks great.
Right.
And, it's just a different way of thinking.
I know, it definitely is. We've been talking about Don's Depot is this long standing bar right off Fifth Street, and it's one of the originals, and they have held out, and I'm praying they will continue to hold out. And if you've never been to Don's Depot, people, you need to go. It is such an experience. It is, such a good time. They have live music. It is a blast. So
my buddy's law firm is next door.
Yeah.
Well, he's like, it's not a good place to have it.
Yeah, it's probably super convenient. No, yeah. I love it. it. Okay, Kelly, so why don't we talk a little bit, though, about a little bit about you. I know you briefly left Austin to study finance. So why don't you tell me, what is it that made you want to get into the line of work of the financial planner road?
Well, first off, it was all about accounting. My dad's an accountant. He had a CPA firm. I wanted to work with that.
Yeah.
And grew up doing that stuff.
And your dad's pretty awesome.
My dad's pretty good at what he does.
He's pretty awesome.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. But accounting school was not that exciting, if you can imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, especially, I know, because you went to Baylor, correct?
I went to Baylor and finished off at Stephen F. Austin, and I actually got interested in finance in Dr. Giaducci's investment analysis class. Mm-hmm. It was really horrible, and he spoke a different language, and but it was fun, and learning how to do all the stuff by hand. At some point in college, I got my life insurance license, and I was like, I'm going to sell life insurance, in the summertime.
Yeah.
Then I sold life insurance door to door in East Texas, which was truly awful.
Okay, well, I can't imagine going door to door, probably in the summer, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah.
In East Texas. Austin's hot, but man.
Right.
Yeah.
It was humid out there.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I enjoyed having my life insurance license and doing those things. And then shortly after that, I got my Series 7 license, which is a general brokerage license. I don't have that anymore, but that's all for the investment side of things. And turns out there's a career for people that like life insurance and investments.
Yeah, for sure. Well, why don't you tell people why it's so important that you state, that you are a certified financial planner and a chartered life underwriter, which would be, that's an important thing to have. You have to have that designation in order to be,
Well,
is it verified or however you want to call it?
Well, CFP is really on the financial planning side.
Right.
It gives you some rapport and some
Credibility.
Some credibility.
Yeah.
For what you do. CFP's, I don't know, it's like getting your master's in finance, financial planning. CLU, I always explain it as no one has a clue what it is.
Yeah.
It is related to life insurance, and it's usually more high-end life insurance, more complex planning. And so, things we don't have to talk about today, but, starting an ILIT, a irrevocable life insurance trust, to fund children and grandchildren, using life insurance to fund that.
That's cool. Yeah, we can totally talk a little bit, dabble a little bit more on that.
Dabble in there.
I think that's super important, which we're going to get to that because I think it's important for people to understand, we call ourselves here at Engel and Volkers, Austin Real Estate, we call ourselves global real estate advisors because we like the idea of, we always compare it to like a financial advisor, right? Mm-hmm. We're advising people on the best use of their money for a property, right? For not just the best use of their money, but for the best lifestyle that they can afford and that they want for their family, right? However that looks. And so I just think a financial advisor is so important. So why don't you tell us, I know you like to call yourself a wealth advisor. You provide such a variety of services. Now, this is kind of a two-part question. If I was to go and decide, hey, I want to meet with a financial or wealth advisor, right? What would I need to have kind of lined up in order to meet with you, for you to be able to accurately tell me, hey, these are the things you probably should do at where you're at with your life? Like, is it just your list of assets? Is it your any estate planning documents? What would I need to give to you, and or why would I want to hire you?
Well, I'll answer your second question first. Most people seek out an advisor when it comes to time or complexity. They either don't have enough time or they have too much complexity in their life. They don't have enough time to do it themselves and keep track of it themselves anymore. And or they have too much complexity in their life. They own a business, they have a family, they have little kids. There's a lot of things going on. You have a lot of things to track. Whenever I'm meeting with new clients and prospects, that I ask them to bring a whole host of different things. Most people our age don't have estate planning documents yet. Most people don't have a will yet. That's something that we always harp on them and suggest that they do that quickly, because as you know, anything can change any day. So you want to know what your assets and liabilities are. So I ask people to bring in, their financial statements. You want to have a copy of your whatever, if you have any investments currently, whether that's taxable or qualified. Qualified just means 401k, IRA, Roth IRA.
If they have any
of that, bring those in. A general knowledge of what your income and expenses are, what your goals are, what do you need to plan for, if you're going to buy a house or get married or have kids, all those different things. And most people know this stuff off the top of their head.
Like what they want to do. Like, I want to retire by I'm 75 and have my home paid off and I
want to retire before I'm 75.
Yeah. Well, I hope you do. I mean, you should. You're the knowledgeable one. You probably will be able to do that.
But the important thing about my business, what I'm doing, is I really enjoy it. And so, like my dad, he's retired CPA. He's been an advisor and my partner for the last 10 years. And it's something you can do for a long time. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, and it's so nice too to have that, dynamic with you guys, because he does have that wisdom and that knowledge that, over the years of working in this space that, can also bring to you, where you're like, I know of all the things that people are doing now and all the things that people care about, because things have changed, right? I think Papa is the best. This is what we call him, Papa. That's his grandfather name. But, you know what I mean? Dale is great and he knows so much, but things have changed with what people want to invest in, especially generationally. And so I think it's important to kind of have that yin and yang. So we're going to talk about investments, right? But we are a real estate podcast. So we always love to tie it back to real estate, but this is such a great, this works really nicely because You're investing. We always tell people when they're buying a house, it's one of the most important decisions that they will make,
Absolutely.
right? Because it's not just, oh, I'm putting a ton of money, but that's where a good chunk of your money every month goes to. That's the number one thing. How much is your mortgage? Or how much is your rent or whatever it might be. But it always is probably the number one question people get asked, probably. It's probably what you ask.
Right. That's going to be almost 90% of our clients, their number one asset starting out. Their largest asset for a long time.
Right. Because, I mean, the whole goal is you sell that, you make some money, and then you can turn around and keep that money and invest it in other things or put it back into another house if you want to, move up in your life. But so I guess from a financial, standpoint, how do you encourage people who are, maybe you meet with someone that's in their 20s and they have an amazing job, but they're not quite ready to buy yet. When they ask you, do you have people that ever ask you, should I really consider just buying a house that's in a good location for, not just for the standpoint of, hey, I can put my money back into the house instead of throwing it away renting, but eventually if they want to keep that house for like a rental stream, right? Income aspect of it. What do you encourage? Do you encourage people to buy a home, or how?
I don't necessarily encourage people to buy a home. It's more in the sense of finding out what their long-term goals are.
Well, and I'm sure most people already have a home, right?
No, not quite.
Not quite.
70-30.
Yeah.
But, if they're committed to their job, or they're committed to their job in Austin, I understand you can buy a home, move to Las Vegas, and leave a rental property here, and that's an income stream for you. Encouragement, not necessarily. It's always a topic of conversation, because the conversation is always about, am I in the right place? Am I paying too much? If I'm, is it big enough for my family?
Right.
Is my mortgage too high?
Right.
Or what else can I afford?
Right.
And, to make my life better.
Right.
And then if you decide to move on, well, do we keep that house as an asset and rent it out, or do we sell it and, move up? And
well, yeah, I read somewhere recently that the rental income business is about, for a success rate of having it as a business or a side hustle, is about an 85% success rate.
Wow.
For renting it out. Right now, of course, that depends on location and, where it's at and the amenities it has, et cetera, et cetera. But it is, I think it's interesting because it is probably one of everyone's biggest asset is your home.
Right.
Hey, I'm Brandon Sparks with Nautilus Lending. We're a full-service mortgage lender and brokerage based right here in Austin, Texas, but serving not just Texas, Florida, and Tennessee as well. One of the things we're really, really good at is creative financing, and it doesn't matter whether you're a first-time homebuyer or a seasoned investor. We have loan programs to facilitate everything legally possible. You can find out more about us at www.nautilus-lending.com. That's www.nautilus-lending.com.
But let's go back to talking, if you were to meet with someone in their 20s, right? They either are single or recently married, and they come and meet with you. They have no kids, right, at this point. And they're like, where do I start? It's so interesting. The amount of people that I've talked to in their 20s have no idea where to start when it comes to investing, or, well, what kind of financial planner do I meet with? Because I will say they're not all made the same, guys, because I have met with a couple of them. And I, of course, before I even knew Kelly, and they were all, let's just say that it's hard to find a good one. Okay. So all that to say is, a lot of people in their 20s, they don't know what to do. Like, where do they start? Because I know some of the ins and outs of your typical, you have a traditional IRA versus like a Roth IRA. But what would your advice be to someone in their 20s? What would be a good thing for them to invest in? Give me one or two things that you would advise.
I'll answer your question in just a moment. I want to preface what I'm about to say with, one, when you're in your 20s, early 20s, just starting out in your career, most of the time you can do it yourself. You don't have to reach out to somebody like me. You can. I have young people that do that all the time, and it's really unique to see that. If you're reaching out to a financial advisor, make sure you shop around. You can ask them about their fees. You can ask them about their services. Generally, in my opinion, I might make some people mad about this, other advisors mad about this, but in my opinion, it's a red flag if you're talking to someone and they're trying to sell you whole life insurance or they're trying to sell you an annuity. You're 25 years old. You don't need that. There's a good chance you don't need that. Right. It has its time and place, but it's not necessarily.
So explain to people here, what's an annuity or whole life insurance versus, I mean, we'll get into the whole first term, but like an annuity, explain to people what that is. An annuity
is something that generally, and they've changed over the years, and but in general, you put in, let's say you put in $10,000, you put in $100,000, and you are stuck in that annuity. You have a surrender period between 5 and 7 years. You can't get your money out, but it has some great benefits to it. But usually this is a product that's better suited for somebody that's 50 or 60 years old.
If they're coming late to the game kind of thing?
No, not even late to the game. It's a common investment. It has its time and place. But for someone that's in their 20s, I'd say the best advice I can give is stop goofing around and just start. Just do it.
Yeah.
So there's 2 types of accounts I would open. I'd open a taxable account. You can do that I happen to work for Schwab Institutional, but you can do that at E-Trade or you can do that at Fidelity, anywhere else, and open a taxable account. That means that I can put $1,000 in there, I can invest it in Apple, and I can take my money out. And I don't have to pay taxes except for the gains on my investment performance. And then I'd open a Roth. The difference between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. A traditional IRA is a lot like your 401k. You have a deferral that you put in there every month. It goes in there tax deferred.
Is there a certain amount you can put in a year
There is
or
a
month?
certain amount, and it's different for all different products. So I believe the number for a 401k this year might be $23,000 a year that you can put in. A traditional IRA is around $6,000 or $7,000, and a Roth IRA $6,000 or $7,000, but it depends on how much money you make.
Got it. Okay.
And there's a whole bunch of different ways you can get money into a Roth IRA, but we'll talk about that at the moment. But so my question to you is, if someone asked me, should I open a Roth IRA? And my question back to them is, based on current economic and political environment, do you think the tax rate is going to be higher or lower in 30 years?
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to be higher? If most people, I haven't had anybody say lower yet.
It's going to be higher.
It's going to be
I'll
higher.
say
it. Travis is like, can I chime in on this?
Higher.
Right, higher. So let's say I put $10,000 into a Roth IRA. I invest it wisely and aggressively as a young person should, as a 20-year-old should. And 30 years from now, let's say making numbers up, it grows into $100,000. Everything, the entire growth is tax-free. So
Got it.
Let's say at 59 and a half, when you decide to take money out of your Roth IRA, that whole $100,000, you're going to pay tax on it.
Got it.
Ever. Now, an IRA, a traditional IRA, you put it in tax deferred. You get a deduction on your tax return for it in the short term.
Right.
Long term, when you take it out, you have to pay current income tax.
Got it. So let's say in my traditional IRA, let's say I start with the max. When you open an account, right, you can put as much money as you want to start, correct? The initial. No, you can't.
No. On a traditional IRA, you have to stick to that
26 or 20, whatever it is. Yeah.
6,500 to 7,000.
Okay.
401k closer to 23,000. And 401ks are different in that those are corporate plans,
right?
Or a 403b or 457 plan. There's all sorts of different qualified plans out there, but you're getting a certain amount taken out of your paycheck every month and put into your 401k.
So does a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA grow at the same rate? Like they both,
it all depends.
Right? It all depends.
It all depends.
I'm just saying, like, is one like
if
both
are invested the exact same way in all Apple stock, they'll grow the same.
Right. So there's the thing about the Roth IRA is that it's tax free.
It's tax free.
Can I ask if I'm understanding correctly?
Yeah.
Roth is taxed going in and not taxed going out.
It's not taxed going in, but it's already been taxed, meaning you earn this money, the government's already taken their cut.
Right. Yeah. So it's post-tax money going in,
right?
And then when you take it out, no tax.
No tax.
Even on the gains.
On the gains.
And on a traditional IRA, it is not taxed money going in.
Right.
And you can write it off every year.
But you're going to pay taxes not only on whatever the rate is in the future, but on the high amount, whatever on whatever you're taking out, which could be more than what you were putting in. So it's almost like you're paying double tax, it sounds like.
It's not truly.
You're gonna end up paying the tax on the money you put in regardless.
But you're getting a
Plus, you're
write-off.
gonna pay money.
You're
Plus, you're
getting a
gonna pay
write-off
tax
every
on the
year.
gains, and potentially in the future it could be very well be a higher tax rate.
And the benefit of the reason why the IRA, the 401k was set up in the first place 50 years ago is that the understanding that you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and you're in a higher tax bracket. But when you start taking money out of your IRA or 401k at retirement in your 60s and 70s, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. So you're going to pay less tax on the money that's being pulled out of that IRA.
Okay, I get that. So that's why sometimes people would just be okay with the traditional because they can write it off every year and then think, oh, if I pull it out at 75, I'll be at X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
You'll be in a lower tax bracket and it won't affect you as much.
Because that all I hear that people say is, oh, traditional IRA, Roth IRA, or 401k when you're in your 20s. Start it there. Yeah. That's all I ever hear.
And one of the other things that I tell everybody is, there's a good chance you had a job in college and, they opened a 401k for you and you left that job and you moved on and it's been 3 jobs ago. Where is that 401k?
Yeah.
There's a good chance you can call your old employer, figure out where it is, what custodian it is, and take all those previous 401ks and IRAs and roll them into one. There's 2 options usually. When I leave an old job and move to a new job, I can take the 401k and roll it over into my new 401k. Or I can roll it over into an IRA outside of that dynamic, and I can invest it myself. And the difference between those investments there is generally at a custodian with your employer, they're going to give you 25 or 30 investment options. They generally work pretty good, and there's nothing wrong with them. But if you say, I want to buy individual stocks, you're not going to be able to do that. You roll it out to your IRA, you can buy whatever you want. Now, it's also on you to manage it.
Right.
There's I'd say there's more pros than cons.
Yeah, for doing an IRA.
When you roll it out to an IRA and combine them together.
That makes sense. Well, because everyone's like, oh, 401k. But people love that because it's, if you get it with a company, then don't they contribute a little bit to it as well?
Generally, there's a contribution to it.
So that's why.
There's a matching.
Yes.
Not always. Some companies do, some companies
And then when they decide, is there like a certain time limit for you to pull money out of your 401k or no? You can pull it out anytime.
Good question. You can pull it out after 59 and a half without penalty.
Got
if
it.
You pull it out before 59 and a half. I don't know why it's 59 and a half.
We just wanted to give you that half year.
Right, that half year. There's a 10% penalty if you pull it out early.
Got it. Okay.
And you pay current income tax rate. So you're going to be, if you're in the 23% bracket, you're going to pay 33% tax on the money you pull out. Now, there's times and reasons you can pull it out, meaning if you're buying a house or if you have some sort of money need, generally I can't remember what the phrase is, but
it's okay if you don't know the phrase, but just people if they need it.
If there's a certain circumstance, a hardship withdrawal is what it's called.
Okay.
Right. And it's up to a certain amount, and I believe you have to pay it back.
Yeah. That's okay. I mean, I get that, but 401k seems to be the most popular. So why don't you tell me, okay, let's take Travis. We're going to use Travis as an example here. Travis just got married recently, 9 months ago? Yes.
Basically.
They're in the newlywed
Congratulations.
phase.
Thank you.
But they're in their, late 20s. But
Early 30s.
Early 30s.
But same thing.
Yeah, early 30s, but they don't have any kids yet. So let's say, for example, they are expecting their first baby. What would you advise people? Hey, listen, okay, you've already done, things for you guys, a Roth IRA, traditional IRA, and or you have a 401k. Okay, let's say he did that in his 20s. Now they need to start thinking about their kiddos.
Yep.
What would you advise, for clearly college and, schooling, right? And any schooling, right? Whether they want to put them in private school when they're in elementary and middle school, high school, whatever. What would you advise for them to do?
Okay. Well, there's a whole lot of things. I would start before the college savings, and first I'd say, do you have a will? Make sure you get a will. Make sure that if something happens to you and your untimely death, that your significant other has the powers of the law to do what to handle your matters.
Exactly.
One, make sure you get a will. Two, if you're having children, I'd make sure you get life insurance. I never thought about, well, I say that as an advisor, but I never thought about getting life insurance. But then I had, my wife got pregnant, and I was like, shoot, I need life insurance.
Yeah.
So I advise all my clients, especially when they're young, $1 million, at least 10 or 20 years of term insurance. And term insurance is very simple. It's a long-term need with a lump sum for a very small amount of upfront premium. But $1 million of life insurance. So if something happens to you, your wife is, your child's 3 months old and you get in a plane crash or whatever the issue is.
Of course.
They have your significant other has money to
explain to them really quickly, what does term mean? So if it's a 10 or 20 year term,
it means
what does
exactly
that mean?
that.
So at that year 10 or year 20,
so if you buy a 10-year term for $1 million, at year 11 on that anniversary date, your premium's going to go up significantly. And it's not as significant in your early years, in your 20s and 30s, but if you buy a 30-year term when you're 30 years old, at 61 years old, whenever that premium comes due on the 31st year, it's going to go up exponentially. It's a big number, but it's the law of large numbers, and it's a law of it's a statistical number.
It makes sense. They take your age and this. I mean, it's I always laugh. My mom's in her she would hate that I said this, but she's in her 70s and she's like, I'm healthier than some 30-year-olds, So I get it that it's it's a statistical number, so I get that.
And so after that, continuing your question, you mentioned the college saving plan. There's something called a 529 plan out there. It's a great tool. When they first came out, up until about 2010, you could really only get them through a financial advisor. Those things have changed. There are still some great 529s out there that advisors offer. I'm going to tell you about the free one because the free one's the best.
Yeah.
It's through Utah. It's the one I advise all my clients to use.
Right.
I can help manage the funds inside there, but I don't charge a fee on it. It's through passive index funds. It's great. But the great thing about 529 plans is it's a lot like a Roth IRA. You put money in there, all the growth is tax-free if it's used for higher education. And some of those rules have changed, but it's as long as it's used for college, it is tax-free, whatever the growth is. The newer rules say that you can use it for K through 12, private school. And that's one of the benefits of it now.
And what about lodging too, right? Like if your child needs to have a dorm and then all that stuff.
I mean, you need a meal plan, you can pay for a meal plan with it.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
But no, I have heard that a 529 you can use for like.
But if you're paying your college tuition and your meal plan's included, that's going to be part of the write-off in there. The other thing that changed most recently is, I don't see this a whole lot, but it does occur where parents and grandparents overfund their 529 plan. And let's say, you have a miracle child and they only take 4 years of school. And they get out and they get a job, and now they have $20,000 or $30,000 left in that 529. Now the new rule says that the parent can create a Roth IRA with those funds and give it to the child. So now you've got a 22-year-old kid coming out of college who's got a $30,000 Roth IRA.
That's awesome.
That you can then grow
use
for
that
40
grow
years.
for 40 years. Yeah, that is awesome. Okay, that's really cool.
So that's the only benefit of overfunding right now. There used to not be one.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. So that's something that you would encourage them. And then let's say like individually, outside of the 529 for your child, is there any other things you would advise people to open an account for the kids in addition to that? Or do you think the 529 kind of can encompass it?
I mean, there are other options out there. There is a UGMA and an UTMA. Those are older savings vehicles that the government came out with. 529 pretty much
is the best.
Yeah. For some people that have children with disabilities, there's something called an ABLE account.
Okay.
That's a little different than a 529 plan. I have clients who have both a 529 plan and an ABLE account. But that's a different conversation. For a
But
different
that's
day.
cool to know that they have something for that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So we've got 401k or Roth IRA or traditional IRA for yourself when you get old. Life insurance for your family in case you don't get old.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And a 529 for your kids when they get older and go to college.
Right.
That feels like 3 pillars. Are there any like more main pillars of like very generic standard American young family financial advice?
I'd hate to say yes, because surely there's got to be a dozen more. But when it comes to the financial advice side of things, I think those are probably the main 3. Make sure you are saving for your retirement. Make sure you're protecting your family in case of your early demise, and set up your kids to be paid for school. The great thing about the insurance is if you pass away, the insurance pays out to your family, and through your will, you can say, hey, I want 10% of my insurance premium or insurance death benefit funded into the 529 plan. So now there's $1 million, you got 10%, $100,000 going into the 529 plan, and your spouse has $900,000 to continue your life on, rebuild their life on.
I'm going to touch back on the life insurance, but first I want to talk about the will. So let's say someone comes to you like, I don't have a will. Who do I go to? Do y'all recommend an attorney? Or I know I went to Baylor with someone. He was actually, a friend of mine, which of course I feel like I'm plugging their company right now, but it's cool. It's called Trust and Will. And you can go online and you can just basically fill it out and you pay a fee. But, I think if it's a pretty basic will, then I think that's probably the way to go. Versus if you have more of a complicated will where you want, your parents to get the kids, but then at a certain age you want it to go to a different person or this or that, then clearly. But do y'all recommend people to attorneys?
I do have a handful of friends that I recommend for wills and estate planning, and I've seen the gamut. There is super simple to the most complex estate planning you can do. And it always starts right here with that. Get your will, get your medical power of attorney, your power of attorney.
Right.
And from there on, you can always make it more complicated from there.
I know. And this is probably not in your realm either, but I've been thinking too, if something was to happen, your house, right? If your house is in your husband and yours name and both of you all go, but then in your will, it says all your assets go to, X, Y, and Z. There's still such a long process with that. So that's a whole nother conversation for probably an attorney that does specific estate planning. But so will is important, of course, like Travis said, investing in your 20s and then of course for your children. But let's talk about life insurance, because this is something that I am just hitting myself over the head. When I was in my 20s, someone advised me, hey, you should get life insurance. You're healthy, you're young, you've no issues. Get it. It's so cheap, at a young age. And I didn't listen. I did not listen.
That's good advice.
And so just from my standpoint, at 26, I got really sick. I was diagnosed with lupus and it was pretty bad, which is crazy. You would think, oh, it's lupus. It's an autoimmune disease. Okay, fine. But because lupus is specific, it affects your kidneys, which Kelly knows of this whole situation. I had met with 2 different financial advisors, and they were going to start with life insurance. And I explained my entire health history. I told them what I had. I told them the severity of it. And what upsets me is the first one ran it through, and I got denied for any sort of life insurance because of lupus. I was healthy as an ox otherwise, but because it affects my kidneys, my kidney function was fine, but because there's protein in your urine, which of course is directly related to your kidneys. Anyway, this is a whole nother health thing. But I got denied, which a denial on your life insurance looks so bad. And he had already had all of my prerequisites of everything I told him. I was 100% upfront. I told him that my kidneys were affected, but the function was fine. And he still ran it. Yeah. I remember when I met Kelly, you had told me this specifically. Ooh, so bad that he ran it through and you got a denial, right? So now that was on my history of everything. But I will say the second financial advisor that I had met with was like, there's nothing I can do for you. You got denied. You have lupus. Sorry. Yeah. Even people who had cancer and now are cancer survivors have a higher health and have a higher life insurance policy than I do, which is, it's, awesome for them, but it stinks for me.
All their rules for remission and things like that.
Right, for sure. But I will say that, Kelly, you're the only person out of 3 people that got me life insurance. It's not a huge policy, but you got it done for me because you were creative and you figured it out. But all that to say is, tell me the difference of someone in their 20s healthy getting the same policy as someone in their late 30s healthy. What's the difference in cost?
Yeah. So whoever gave you that advice to get it while you're young and healthy, that is great advice.
Yeah.
And the young is not as important as the healthy. You could be 45 and be in the very top health class and it still be incredibly affordable.
Right.
So let's see if I can find my notes here. I ran some numbers yesterday based on someone who's, and I ran it for 26 years old. You'd probably say, why did you run it for 26 to 25? I thought, I don't know, I bought insurance when I was 26. So that was my justification. But 26 years old, I always, for anyone that walks through my door that's younger, it's a minimum of 20 years. Because if you're 26 years old, 20 years gets you to 46. Well, if you're having kids at 30, the kids are out of high school at 48.
Yeah.
And, it gets you through that hard part of life with kids in school and or kids in college. Let's see.
No, yeah. I mean, well, that's the thing too, is that I can't remember. What did we do for my life insurance policy? Was it 20?
I believe it's 20.
20-year term. You'll have to go back and look at it.
Yeah, I have to go back and look. You should ask me that yesterday.
No, I know. I should have.
But
No, it's okay.
Yeah,
because we did it. And I think guys, I am really healthy. Otherwise, even lupus, whatever. But just because I have great kidney function, but protein in my urine, I think my policy is like $350,000 or something. That's all I was able to get. And it's $1,000 a year or something.
Yeah, it's not much.
It's not much. It was the
most
I could get.
About your situation, I've run through this situation with many clients. Someone that's had cancer in their 40s and they're in their 50s now. They've been in remission for 10 years. You can get insured again. Mm-hmm. It's not a huge number, but you can still get life insurance. You can still get long-term care insurance. And that's generally someone that when you're getting older, you're not worried about your life insurance anymore. You're worried about who's going to take care of me. Right.
And that long-term care is also something I think is important because if, I always think about people who have maybe a history of Alzheimer's or dementia or any sort of.
And that's why you got to get it while you're young.
Yes.
Because if you have the markers now, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, exactly. Long-term care is great.
And you can, and a lot of these things can be accomplished through life insurance.
Right.
And you asked me earlier the difference between term and permanent insurance. Those things can be accomplished through permanent insurance. To get back to your
permanent's
question,
more expensive, right?
It is in general. But back to your point, we'll cover that in a second. Back to your point about term insurance, a 26-year-old for $1 million at 20 years is about $30 a month.
That is
it's not
nothing.
Much. I mean,
Travis, that's nothing.
It's $30 a month.
Yeah.
Starting at $30. That's the highest health class at 26
And at
years
$1 million, right, you can, what's the ticker for before you have to go and get like a full health examination?
So during COVID, people couldn't do their health examinations.
Right.
They weren't sending nurses out to take health exams. So they developed a new way of doing that underwriting. And a lot of it is, all electronic now.
And medical records.
A phone call and medical records. And generally that's up to $3 million. Mm-hmm. It kind of depends on age. Now, if you have certain things in your medical history, they're going to make you go in and get,
tested,
weight and urine and things like that. But for the most part, it's pretty hands off. And I always say $1 million just because it's a good starting point.
Yeah.
If it's not affordable, we can go down to 200,000. We can go to 600,000.
Right.
You can change it however you want to do it. But then if you said, okay, 26 versus a 40-year-old, still in that same health class at the very peak, starts around $60 a month.
Right.
It's not bad. Now, if you change that to a 26-year-old smoker. So a 26-year-old, highest health class, $30 a month, which is $360 a year, versus a 26-year-old smoker is $1,300 a year.
Yeah.
So it's still $100 a month.
So quit smoking, people.
Quit smoking. And the important thing to do is, and what we did with you is, we run this through pre-insurance with an advanced planning group, and I go to them and say, hey, this person, they smoke, but they only smoke cigars. They smoke, I don't know, they work at a cigar shop, and, they smoke 2 cigars a month.
And this is all based on someone just filling out a form. Are you a smoker? So someone could legitimately just say no on the application.
They could do that. And that's another conversation about
clearly
material
honest,
misinformation and such for insurance companies. But, if you click write down you're a smoker and say, Kelly, I don't smoke cigarettes, but I smoke cigars when I play golf, every other week. Well, there's companies that look more favorably at that than smoking cigarettes or dipping tobacco. Some are starting to become more favorable on marijuana and vaping. Not as much, but it's still there. Especially, and the most important thing you can do when you're filling out that life insurance application is be upfront with them, saying, hey, yeah, I do smoke marijuana, and I do it 12 times a year or whatever. And they're going to see that in your urine whenever they do those tests.
Right.
As long as it's not a surprise to them, they're going to be a little bit more favorable for you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's actually probably pretty good advice for sure. Because, people fill it out and they're like, oh, I don't want to say this. But basically life insurance is so important because, do it at a young age.
Yeah.
Do it at a young age. And it's literally pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For a plan like that. And I wish I had done that. But okay, explain to them term versus whole. So whole, you pay life insurance. You pay a lot more up front, but
not necessarily. Well, kind of. So it's term versus perm.
Right.
Is the conversation.
Term versus perm.
Right.
Permanent.
Permanent insurance encompasses a lot of different things, but it starts with whole life. Then there's variable universal. Well, there's the universal life. So there's variable universal life and index universal life. There's a couple others, but those are the main 3. Whole life is something that you're going to pay for your entire life. And so you're not doing a 20-year term. If you're 20-year, I'm going to make up numbers here because there's no way I can
That's
tell
fine.
you.
No numbers are great.
But if let's say you're a 40-year-old person and you want term insurance and it's going to cost you, $1,000, X number of dollars a year, you go to whole life, it might cost you $3,000 a year, or it might cost you $4,000 a year. And the thing that you get with that insurance, and it all depends on the amount of insurance you're buying. The thing you get with that is you get dividends. You're usually buying into a mutual company. So there's companies like Mutual of Omaha and Mass Mutual and these big insurance companies that have been around for 200 years. They pay dividends. So you get, some return on your assets in there. They have other options like, I'm incapacitated, but I'm not dying and I need long-term care. You can add long-term care in there. Things like that. I thought of something that was important. Back to the term.
Yep.
So one of the caveats, I don't know if it's a caveat, maybe it's more just a perk of term insurance, is the ability to convert it into whole life. And so I personally have a 20-year term insurance policy, and some insurance companies have different time frames for it, but most of them say up until the date of your last premium payment, you can convert to whole life or to IUL. Or
so like
VUL.
that's probably something that we're going to do for me.
Absolutely.
Because that was the biggest thing I remember. We went with a company that allows you to convert to whole life.
Right. And the most important part about that is you're allowed to convert it to whole life or convert it to a permanent policy without evidence of insurability. So in a client of mine's situation, he's 65 years old. He bought insurance when he was, 40. It wasn't for me. And we're working with him now, and he said, well, I'm 65. My insurance runs out in 5 years. I bought a 30-year policy, but I have cancer now. It's like, convert it. They cannot tell you no. Unless you materially misrepresented something back in the old days, and they can go back and find that, convert it. They have to accept it. They may give you a limitation on how much you can convert it to, but they have to let you convert it.
Right.
So that's another benefit of term. You can get into it, later on in life.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things you can do with insurance. I like it. I happen to have a lot of engineers as clients, and some of those engineers like to read every word. And I've spent a lot of time reading word for word
the
insurance policies to some clients in the past. But there's a lot of things you can do. If you said, Kelly, I never want to pay taxes again, we can do that. Mm-hmm. You just have to have the right setup. It has to take the right amount of money. And, you know, the CPAs and attorneys out there can check me on that. But that's the one thing my dad always says is that's the only time I can guarantee and say I'll never pay tax again is through this certain type of insurance. Mm-hmm. It's just how it works.
Yeah.
You got to set it up right.
I mean, I will say this, like anytime I've come to Kelly with like, hey, I heard about this or he is so good at giving me all the information, making sure I know exactly what we're talking about. And it's just a conversation. And I love that I can ask you those questions and I don't feel like it's, you know, because you love this and you're really good at it. So, anyway, I just so appreciate you coming on today and talking about it, you know, because I think people need to know, right? And like Travis said, the 3 things that we can go away with is in your 20s.
Start working on your retirement.
Yep.
Just, even if it's $100 out of your paycheck, $100 every 2 weeks for 50 years is going to amount to something, especially when you're invested in, you know, an age-based plan of some sort. It's going to amount to something.
Yeah. So you've got 401k, traditional IRA, Roth IRA in your 20s. For your kids, right? 529 account, right?
Yeah.
Have a will and get life insurance when you're young and healthy if you can. And if not,
I talk to too many clients that are in their 50s, 60s, or 70s and say, I just never got around to getting a will. It's like, well, you've been lucky. Get it done. It's going to cost you between $500 and $1,000 just for your will. Just get it done.
Well, and if you don't have a will, everyone needs to hear this. If you don't have a will and you have children and something happens to you, the kids could potentially go to the state for time being, which is
especially if something happens to you and your spouse and
there's no will. I mean,
no custodian.
I don't know how lenient they are with grandparents or whatnot, but I just know somebody had written something about how there was no will. The kids went to the state. The house was I mean, it was this very long, painful, drawn out process with an already very painful situation. Right. So it's like a favor you're doing for your loved ones. So like get a will 100%.
Right.
But anyway, well, Kelly, this was great. I know a lot of people need this advice. There's so many people who don't know where to start or what to do. So again, we're so happy to have Kelly Cooper here. He is with U.S. Capital Wealth Advisors here in Austin, which is another thing I love to plug is because it's an Austin company. They're right downtown, right off what?
6th and Lavaca.
6th and Lavaca. I was about to say 5th and Lavaca.
We got a new steakhouse.
Yes. Oh, there you go. More places for y'all to eat. Yeah. Well, anyway, thanks for being on today. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.